So, introduction, this is Anthony, co-producer.
Nice to meet you.
I'm David Bertolino.
Excellent.
Let me put
Gail
in
Jorden.
You're outside of camera, so you gotta come in a little more.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah,
I
sorry.
appreciate it.
You're
And
welcome.
Quinn Monahan, director.
Great to meet you. Well, I really enjoyed this movie, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to me about it. It was perfect viewing to get in the spirit for October for Halloween. Sweet. And I kind of want to start with inspiration, right? And the film is very clear that Vincent Price was an inspiration for you with this project and beyond. And I'd love to hear from the rest of you kind of who was that inspiration? What was that inspiration for you that got you into this and got you interested?
I met David. We were neighbors and we were friends for about 10 years, and he used to talk about Spooky World all the time. And I would say, we should make a documentary about that. Yeah, he was very busy with a lot of different projects and a play that he was producing. But eventually, it just came. It was kind of time, and he said, "Yeah, let's do this. Let's do it." We took a drive to Las Vegas. I put a microphone on him, recorded basically his whole life story over about 5 hours of driving to and coming back from Vegas. And we decided we're going to do this thing. So David started setting up interviews back in Massachusetts, in the Boston area. And we went from there. And then suddenly, COVID hit. So that impacted us. But that was how we got started. We just knew instinctively this is a good documentary subject because it's so visual. So then we set about how to illustrate this, how to tell this story without, we didn't know if we had much footage or not. We had some, but obviously there's a big story. The scope is pretty big.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the Vincent Price thing came into play, because we started looking at footage and Vincent Price kept coming up, and then we kind of decided, hey, Vincent Price should be his alter ego in the film. And then we really started going to town looking for just.
It was a little bit more than that, because once we got all that footage together, we had our story, sort of, and we had a lot of missing spots. And Vincent Price, like they said, kept coming up, and we went, Vincent Price, holes in the story, let's go for Vincent Price. And David loved the idea.
Did it work for you?
Oh, of course.
Okay, because
I was curious.
Be very honest with you. We had a small test audience a while ago, but it was kind of family and friends populated. Not a good group to ask. But the diehard fans, we were worried if they would embrace the fact that Vincent was David's alter ego, or it was just a cheap way of pandering. So it's good to hear that you like the.
Very good.
Of course. Going into it, I was very curious. I was like, all right, in a lot of the imagery you used Vincent Price, how is this going to connect? But it was a great story.
It's connected for you. That's good.
Absolutely.
Gail and I, once we sort of committed that he was going to be David's alter ego in the film, we're a couple. We've been together for 25 years. So we started watching 2 and 3 and 4 sometimes Vincent Price films a night. I mean, we literally have seen every Vincent Price film ever made. And they were just little snippets like, we can pull that, So it started out as being public domain, and eventually we got fair use. Because we sort of explained that he is the alter ego, and that is it.
Oh, it's very clever. Yeah.
And not just as mate. We've worked together for 25 years.
Of course.
We met working
We
together.
never stopped.
That's wonderful. I mean, really, talking about Vincent Price, before I even got the screener, one of my Uber drivers, we were talking about the festival, and Vincent Price came up, and that's how we connected.
Wow.
And it's really interesting. It's a really funny story.
We're big, huge fans now.
Yeah.
If we were before, but now we're,
Well, if you think about,
of course.
if you think about the longevity of things,
Right.
the true test of that is long after you're gone, if people are still keeping you relevant.
Right.
And it's a perfect marriage, because people still to this day talk about the legend of Spooky World, the original one in Berlin that David created, and they still talk about Vincent Price. So it's actually a perfect marriage if you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, really, it does such a good job of making me feel nostalgic for a place, for a community that I never experienced. It was not on my radar.
Boy, you couldn't have said a better thing to a filmmaker, because that is exactly what we wanted. We wanted people to feel like, wow, I wish I had been there. I would have thrived.
It's great. That we love hearing that. We heard that quite a bit in one of the fan shows that we went to last week in Boston called Silver Screen. And the fans said, There were fans from all over the country, not just the Boston market, but the fans from all other parts of the country was embracing it, saying, "I wish we could have seen Spooky World. It's the granddad. It's like you go to the local Indian casino, and then someday you go to Las Vegas, and it's Mecca." Well, that's what Spooky World was to a lot of fans of horror. It was Mecca.
Of course.
And we're hoping to tap into a younger audience here who are not used to real things, real immersive experiences, that they're the goggles and the phone and everything. But if they look back on our generation, by the way, the three of us are seniors, all three of us. We all have AOL address. So to the idea that we could tap into a younger audience to think what we were doing back in the day was cool is kind of neat.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. And while there are still obviously fan in-person experiences, the Universal and the Scary Farms and even horror conventions, it's changed so drastically. Even in the time that I've been attending these things, where it was a much more kind of scrappy or personal experience, and now it has become so corporate and so sterile.
But the cool thing is, hopefully they'll learn from our film that that's still out there.
Right.
The place we went to last night here in Austin, Texas, House of Torment, very much like Spooky World. They didn't have the hayride. But there was a bunch of passionate kids, and you could just see them light up when we talked about it. They're so proud of what they've done, and they should be.
It's about interacting with an image on a screen. It's a little bit
It's
dangerous.
real people.
It's real.
Real dangerous.
Of course, and it really does remind me of my youth working at haunts and stuff, and it's
cool.
Such a great experience, and it's so great to watch that. What was that experience like, trying to pull these people back together, and from the cast and crew and some of the horror?
It took us
legends?
4 years.
Yeah,
it took 4 years to do it, and Gail and I literally worked every single day for most of that 4 years.
Because we had David Bertolino pulling people out, and then he cracked the faucet open, and then boom, it just came.
Yeah, I mean, every time we thought, okay, now this is all we're gonna work with, David would say, "I got another guy. He just called me."
And also the movie was taking more reveal behind the scenes, and we wanted to get the controversy. We didn't want it to make it look like it was all marshmallow fluff and smooth sailing. So when the controversial topics came in, suddenly you've got lawyer interviews, you've got a judge, you've got various people, town officials, and so there was more of the story that we're putting together.
There was more layers to it as we went along than we anticipated, but that is actually a blessing for us.
Yeah.
So
that makes good
It
story.
so real.
I mean, good.
Because it was.
Yeah, you don't have good story without controversy.
We love the fact that it made you want to see more.
Yeah.
That we love that.
absolutely.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Well, we had a lot more.
Yeah.
And that's
A lot
A whole lot.
that's the Quinn had dwindled down to a 96-minute well-oiled machine.
Right.
But what ended up happening was David at the beginning was able to use his connections with the mainstream media in Boston. We have some beautiful master footage from the 90s, but remember, VHS era.
Right.
But then, as we went along, word of mouth started going along with the hunters saying, hey, this is actually a viable product. And our trust was earned on their end. And all of a sudden, vaults were opened. And now we are sitting on a treasure trove of material. It was difficult editing this thing down.
Yeah.
Oh, unbelievable.
Because there's so many, and we had over 100.
There are so many sequences that we built that didn't make it to the movie because we just didn't have the time. So we were building sequences before we even knew how the story was going to end or how we were going to tie this all together. We knew there were certain sequences that we wanted. This happened, that happened. We started building those sequences, hoping to stitch them together with interstitial material. And so a lot of that stuff just didn't make it into the movie because we would have had a 3-hour movie.
Yeah. Well, how do you choose that? How do you? Because you're crafting the story, right? I never experienced it. It's completely through that you gave me.
The way to do it really is have people look at it who haven't seen any of it, because they go, "Yeah, I love that."
It's more than that. You have to create the story first, and you go back. You have everything revealing itself, and you want to keep the story clean. And you got to move through the acts. You got to have the main character and the supporting character. You have to have that, even in a documentary.
Of course.
So when you look at these things and people are talking, I went over interviews sometimes 4 or 5 times where I was pulling the exact words that I needed to tell that story. You focus on 100 interviews that much, and believe me,
Yeah.
it comes, but not without really working for it.
Right.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think the story comes through great, and that's why.
Great.
It's such a
That's what we-
broad topic. I know that's got to be tough.
That's music to our ears
Yeah,
because that story with
Yeah,
capital
of course, of
S
course.
was the thing that
Yeah.
we were constantly trying to focus.
Oh, well, the great thing is we have so many of these interviews and so many stories. We started embarking on a scripted series last year, and we have some pretty big name producers, like the biggest names, asking us to continue through with it. We have a handshake
I
deal.
hadn't heard about a scripted.
Yep, we're waiting on it, but we want that to be a bigger. This is the master.
We were
This is the bigger-
approached by somebody who
That's
has
exciting.
several shows,
Yeah.
and he said we're his next TV project.
Well, but if we're not,
Yeah.
we're still open to
Yeah.
hearing offers from other people who may
Yes.
want to.
We started this.
There's nothing set in stone yet, but is what I'm saying. So we have developed a series that may or may not be produced by one particular entity, but we're open to other interesting offers.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
It's a good position to be in.
Yeah, of course. Of course, it's a great position. And to have that, the material already.
Yeah,
And to have people like Spencer Charnas, who's as big a star now in 2023 as you can find, who went to, it wasn't shown in the movie, but the story of Spencer is, he reached out to us last year, and an email, a cold email, saying, "Hi, I'm Spencer, I'm in this band, here's some of the articles in Forbes magazine about my merchandising, how can I be a part of this film?" Spooky World put me in the trajectory into horror-themed music as a child. He went on to the midway there. He lived it, he breathed it, and now when you see his stage show, one of the cut scenes is an old Spooky World commercial. So it's like in 22, like we were talking about earlier with Vincent Price, David was able to create an intellectual property that is still alive in 2023, except the venue was abandoned for years. You can actually go on YouTube and see people about no more than 5 years ago going through all the woods and the brush, seeing the abandoned places.
Explorers.
And that's the impact that his creation had on pop culture.
Right. You can almost build the legend when you have that kind of.
Yeah, when we started to see that, when Gail and I started looking at that stuff, we said, "Oh yeah, we have not only we have a story, but we have an audience."
Yeah. So, taking it even further back, I'm a huge Halloween person. Decorations, costumes. It matters a lot to me. I'd love to hear what your favorite Halloween costume or even decoration was. Maybe in your youth.
I have one. When my son Sammy was about 8 years old, our prop master at Spooky World created a baby carriage. And we had a image of a little baby huddled inside the baby carriage. And you push the baby carriage along, and there was a trigger mechanism that would catapult this baby towards the victim in front. And we used it at Spooky World, except for Halloween night. Before I went to work at Spooky World, I went with my son, who was like 8 years old at the time, trick-or-treating. And he would lure the people out of their house. "Do you want to see our new baby? We have a new baby." And press the trigger, and people would have bowls of candy go flying, and they get hearted. So of course my son got known as the Halloween terrorist in the neighborhood. But that's my fondest memory of any kind of a prop/costume.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
I have a really old memory. My mom made me an outfit. It was a harem girl, and I had this beautiful veil on my face that was pink and little rhinestones, little ruffles. And I said, "Mom, I just love this." And in later years, she said, "You know where I got that veil?" And I said, "No." She says, "I had a pair of fancy pink panties."
That's wonderful. Yeah.
That's a great story.
That's amazing.
That should be in the movie.
I have a
That's what we
picture.
ask. There's always great stories. Everyone has great stories about that place.
I just think, you know, my fondest memories of Halloween are just carving the pumpkin with my family and, you know, digging it out and cutting. You know, my mom's very artistic, so she was very good with the cutting and so forth, and seeing it, you know, out on our front stoop. But basically, yeah, I mean, for me, Halloween was you know, like all kids, just candy and fun.
Yeah.
For me, I could go back into my childhood, but actually it was last year. My son was a month old,
Oh yeah.
and now that I'm a little older and losing a little on the top, thus the hat, but I was able to go as Dr. Loomis. My wife went as Laurie Strode,
Yeah.
and my little guy, we had a blue jumpsuit with little black Dr. Martens boots, and I cut a wig off of a Michael Myers plush doll
Oh,
and put it on his head. And there's a picture of me pretending that he's going after my wife, and I'm trying to hold him back, but he's just crying. So, but I think that, again, it goes back to the film. It's this sense of family. David alluded to it with his son when he was 8, that this magic just keeps going every year. And Spooky World has launched so many ships, so many haunts, that it's even more viable now, and I cannot wait to keep that magic going with my kid.
Yeah. That's
As we say in the film, Halloween is now overtaking Christmas, even, you know, in terms of
right.
popularity and involvement. So.
Sweet.
Well, you know, I really appreciate you bringing this film here and sharing it with us, and I cannot wait to take it back and share it with my friends and family.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Here's our
this is-
signed poster.